When two Lafayette cops handcuffed a man at a gas station over a vague description, they didn't know they'd wake up in his courtroom the next morning. The pump clicked off, but Clifton didn't rush. He stood for a second, staring at the digital numbers. 63. It had been a long day, full of tension and back and forths between two families deadlocked in a property dispute. Clifton Baines was a mediator, and a damn good one. The kind of man who could spend 6 hours in a windowless room, listening to people argue, and still walk out with a solution they could both live with. That Tuesday afternoon in Lafayette, Louisiana, Clifton just wanted to grab a bottle of water, maybe a black coffee, and head home to his wife. He wore jeans, a plain grey hoodie, and sneakers. Not a suit like earlier, just regular clothes. His SUV, a new plug-in hybrid with tinted windows, caught glances. But he was used to that. What he wasn't used to was what came next. As he reached for the gas cap, he caught movement in the side mirror. Two Lafayette PD cruisers were parking at odd angles, one near the exit, one behind his vehicle. Clifton blinked. Didn't think much. But then he saw the doors swing open fast. A voice barked out from behind. "Sir, step away from the vehicle." He turned. Slow. "Everything all right, officer?" Two officers approached, one older with a squared jaw and close-cut hair, the other lankier and young, maybe early 30s, with nerves you could smell. "Hands where I can see 'em. Now!" Clifton raised his hands, one still holding his key fob. "Is there a problem?" "Is this your vehicle?" "Yes, it is. Registered in my name. My ID and reg are inside." The older one, name tag said Mullery, motioned to his partner. "Check it out." Clifton tried to stay calm. "May I ask what this is about?" "Car matches the description from a theft reported down on Moss Street," Mullery replied, circling slowly like he was sizing up prey. "That's a Broad Street," Clifton said, "and a common car. You got a receipt for that gas?" The younger one asked. Clifton gave a tight nod. "In the cup holder. You can grab it if you want." "Don't move," Mullery snapped. That's when a kid across the lot, high school-aged, judging by the Letterman jacket, pulled out his phone and hit record. Clifton noticed, but didn't say anything. He kept his hands visible, calm voice, measured words. "I have my driver's license and registration in the glove compartment." "Reach for it and you're resisting," Mullery warned. "Turn around." "You're detaining me for driving my own car?" Mullery didn't answer. He grabbed Clifton's wrist and twisted it behind his back. "You can explain it downtown." The cuffs clicked. Cold metal. Clifton flinched slightly, but didn't resist. The younger cop looked uncertain now, as if realizing something felt off. "Sir, I'm just going to check your ID real quick," the young one muttered. "It's just standard." Clifton didn't reply. He was looking at the kid still recording. His eyes didn't say, "Help," but they said, "Remember this." Traffic slowed. A couple of people stepped out of their cars, confused. One woman inside the gas station walked out holding her phone like she was already calling someone. The older cop pressed Clifton against the hood. "Got any weapons on you?" "No." "Drugs?" "No." "Been drinking?" "I just mediated a property dispute. I'm going home." Silence. The younger cop returned with the registration and ID. He looked up, his voice a notch lower. "It says here, Judge Clifton Baines." Clifton didn't move. "That's correct." But Mullery didn't back off. "People lie all the time. We'll sort it out." That's when the station manager came outside. "Y'all need to chill. That man comes in here twice a week. He's not who you think he is." More phones came out. More silence. Clifton was placed in the back of the cruiser. No words, no fight, just the quiet sound of the door slamming shut on someone who'd seen this kind of thing happen to others, but never expected it would happen to him. But inside that squad car, Clifton already knew this wasn't ending with a complaint form. The cruiser smelled like stale fries and sweat. Clifton sat quietly, wrists tight in steel, his back pressing against the cracked leather seat. Every bump in the road jostled the cuffs, scraping bone. He didn't speak. Not yet. Not when they merged onto I-10. Not when the dispatcher radioed a routine check. Officer Bryce Fennick, the younger one, glanced at the rearview mirror a few times, jaw tight. He seemed new, maybe 2 years on the force. He cleared his throat. "You work downtown?" Clifton didn't answer right away. "Yes." "Law firm?" Clifton let the silence breathe. "Something like that." Sergeant Mullery, riding shotgun, twisted in his seat and glared back. "He's being smart. Probably Googled a judge's name once and slapped it on a fake ID." Fenwick looked uncertain. "His record's clean. Plates match. ID's got a legit hologram." "Don't care," Mullery snapped. He had an attitude. Claimed he was a judge. That's a big claim. "I didn't claim," Clifton said. "I am." Mullery scoffed. "Well, Judge, maybe you should have dressed the part. Maybe you should have stayed in your courtroom instead of showing up in a hoodie behind the wheel of a $60,000 car at a gas station known for stolen goods." Clifton stared straight ahead. "So that's how you judge character?" "No," Mullery said flatly. "That's how I stay alive." Silence again. Clifton leaned his head back, counted the seconds between each freeway sign. Remembered his wife's voice from that morning, the blueberry scone she made him take even though he didn't want it. He wondered if she'd heard yet. She worked in legal advocacy. She would find out before they even reached the station. Fenwick finally spoke up again, more quietly this time. "Sir, if your ID checks out, they'll clear this up fast. Just protocol, you know." Clifton looked into the mirror. "It's not protocol. It's a presumption." Fenwick's fingers tightened on the steering wheel, but he didn't argue. The cruiser exited near Jefferson Street and turned onto Monroe, pulling into a side lot behind the precinct. A small group of patrol officers stood smoking near a dumpster, their voices trailing off as they watched Clifton being pulled from the back seat. One officer raised an eyebrow. "Wait, ain't that—" Mullery yanked the cuffs harder. "Keep moving." Inside, the fluorescent lights were harsh. Clifton's eyes adjusted as they passed desks stacked with paperwork, buzzing monitors, and stale coffee cups. Nobody offered a greeting. A few officers looked up, recognition dawning. One woman, Detective Alina Navarro, froze mid-conversation, her mouth hanging open. She stepped forward. "Mullery, what the hell are you doing with Judge Baines?" Mullery didn't miss a beat. "Picked him up for questioning. Possible match with a suspect vehicle from earlier." "Have you lost your mind?" Navarro's voice cut like a blade. "Uncuff him, now." Mullery hesitated. "We were following procedure." Navarro's face darkened. "No, you weren't. You just put handcuffs on a sitting circuit court judge in front of a gas station. What part of that feels like procedure to you?" Fenwick looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Clifton's eyes locked with Navarro's. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor." She nodded. "You'll have one in 5 minutes." The cuffs came off. Clifton didn't rub his wrists. He just stood tall, adjusted his hoodie slightly, and looked around the room. Every eye was on him now. The officers who had been laughing earlier now stood still, avoiding his gaze. Navarro lowered her voice. "You want me to call your wife?" Clifton shook his head. "She's probably already on her way." But even as they offered coffee and apologies, Clifton wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about accountability. Clifton sat in a small interview room, clean, plain, windowless. A chipped table, 3 plastic chairs, and a flickering fluorescent bulb buzzing overhead. No cuffs this time, just a plastic cup of water and a folder sitting across from him, unopened. The door had been closed for 6 minutes. It wasn't jail, but it wasn't freedom either. Outside the glass pane, he could see 2 officers talking in hushed tones. One of them was Internal Affairs Lieutenant Devra Linley, short, sharp voice, smart eyes. She kept glancing at him through the glass, arms folded, like she was trying to read his mind before she stepped in. He didn't look away. He wanted them to feel it, his stillness. Eventually the door creaked open and she walked in, notepad in hand. "Judge Baines." "Miss Linley." She sat without asking. "I don't think I need to explain how bad this looks." Agreed. She studied his face, trying to figure out if he was angry, embarrassed, bitter, or all 3. He took a sip of water. "I'm not here to rant, but I am going to be clear. I expected nothing less." Clifton set the cup down. "I was followed without cause. Detained without justification, searched without consent, cuffed in public, humiliated in front of strangers, all because I was at a pump in the wrong car wearing the wrong clothes. She clicked her pen. The video's already making rounds. Dozens of calls have come in. He nodded. It'll reach national media by tomorrow morning. Are you planning to file a formal complaint? I'm not sure a complaint covers what happened. She raised an eyebrow. Then what do you want? He leaned back, eyes on the ceiling tile. I want the truth on the record. I want accountability. Not just for me, for every person without a title who goes through this every day. There was silence between them. She jotted something down. Can I ask, do you know Officer Mullery personally? No, but I've heard of him. He's been through 3 misconduct reviews in the past 6 years, hasn't he? Linley didn't respond. And Fenwick? Relatively new? Clean file. But passive, she admitted. Didn't stop the arrest, didn't question it until you were already in the back seat. He didn't escalate it either. That doesn't excuse him. I didn't say it did. Linley paused. Judge, I'm sorry. Clifton held her gaze. I don't need your apology. I need your office to do its job. She nodded once, firm. You'll be contacted within the hour by the Oversight Committee. They'll initiate the review. There will be a hearing. Good. Will you recuse yourself? He smiled faintly. No, I won't be the one on trial, but I will be the one presiding. Linley leaned forward. That's highly unusual. So is arresting a judge at a gas station for driving his own car. Another beat of silence. Finally, she stood. You're free to go. Do you need a ride? He got up. My wife's outside. As he stepped into the hallway, the same stares followed. But they weren't the same kind as before. This time, it wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. Navarro was waiting near the exit, phone in hand. She's parked on Monroe, she said softly. She's upset. Of course she is. She brought your court robe. Clifton exhaled slowly. Navarro added, You know this hearing's going to explode, right? It'll be political, messy, loud. I'm aware. You ready for that? Clifton looked at her. I've been ready. I just didn't know it was my turn yet. But outside that building, in the passenger seat of his wife's Prius, he wasn't thinking about the noise. He was thinking about the silence he could finally break. By the time Clifton closed the front door behind him that evening, the video had already crossed 120,000 views. It wasn't just local Facebook groups anymore. It had hit Twitter, Reddit, even TikTok. 10 seconds of grainy footage showing a black man in a grey hoodie being pinned against a silver SUV while calmly repeating, I'm not resisting, looped with captions like, He's a judge. And they didn't care. His wife, Geneva, had the news on mute. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, phone in hand. Her jaw was tight, but she didn't yell. She didn't have to. You good? She asked. Clifton nodded. Physically, yes. She handed him a robe. You have court tomorrow. He took it gently, then leaned against the counter. For a second, they just stood in the quiet. Outside, neighbors were pulling trash bins to the curb. Inside, the weight of the day still lingered like steam after a long shower. Did you eat anything? She asked. Didn't feel like it. Geneva stepped away from the stove. I made gumbo. You'll eat. He didn't argue. At that moment, her phone vibrated again. She glanced at the screen, scoffed, and turned it face down. Who was it? Journalists. Blogs. A law professor from Tulane. People I haven't talked to in years. Everybody's got something to say now. Clifton exhaled through his nose. I didn't want to become a headline, he said. You didn't. They made you one. He sat at the table, the robe draped across his lap. Geneva placed a bowl in front of him, sat across, and rested her chin on her hand. They had you in cuffs, babe. You, of all people. I don't get special treatment. Maybe you should, she said flatly. You've earned it. He stirred the gumbo in silence. Then, quietly, how many others had no camera watching them? No wife calling contacts? No badge to flash later? Geneva blinked, then stood up and retrieved her iPad. She opened it, tapped a few times, and turned it to face him. A local news station was running the clip. The headline read, Lafayette judge mistakenly arrested at gas station. Investigation launched. He read it twice. Mistakenly arrested? He said aloud. Geneva raised an eyebrow. That's what they're going with. A new voice came from the hallway. Dad? Their daughter, Maren, peeked around the corner. She was 19, a sophomore at LSU, home on break. Her curls were pulled into a loose bun, eyes puffy from crying. Hey, sweetheart. She walked into the kitchen and hugged him without a word. He rested his chin on her shoulder. I saw the video at Sam's place, she whispered. I thought it was fake at first. I thought someone edited your face onto it. Clifton pulled back and looked her in the eyes. I'm okay. No, you're not, she said quietly. But you will be. Later that night, the three of them sat in the living room. Geneva scrolled through comments, some supportive, some vile. One caught her eye. Doesn't matter if he's a judge. If you act suspicious, you get treated like a suspect. She read it out loud. Clifton shook his head. That's the danger, right there. Suspicion without cause. And the idea that dignity is something you have to prove. Maren looked at him. So, what are you going to do? He turned off the lamp beside him. I have court at 9 a.m. Geneva studied his face. Are you going to recuse yourself? No. You sure? He looked at them both. I've spent my life trying to be impartial, but that doesn't mean I should be absent. But as he stood and walked toward the bedroom, one thing was already settled in his mind. He would not allow tomorrow to be just another internal slap on the wrist. The Lafayette Municipal Courthouse had seen its fair share of noise, land disputes, fraud cases, political feuds. But that Wednesday morning, the tension wasn't about what was happening inside the courtroom just yet. It was about who was walking in. Clifton arrived early. Dark suit, no robe yet. Geneva parked 2 blocks away to avoid the reporters. Maren stayed home. Still shaken, but she'd texted, "We're watching." The courthouse hallway was already filling with people, some he recognized from local legal circles, others he'd never seen before. Law students, activists, everyday folks who'd caught the video online and wanted to see what would come of it. He passed a clerk, whispering, "That's him. That's Judge Baines." Another nodded. "He's the one in the gas station video." He didn't stop, just walked straight into his chambers, closed the door, and sat down at his desk. 10 minutes later, a soft knock. "Come in." Lieutenant Linley stepped in holding a manila envelope. "We ran the footage through internal review last night," she said, handing it to him. Clifton didn't open it. "Let me guess. It confirms what the public saw." "Yes, from multiple angles." "Witness statements?" "We have 6, including the gas station attendant and the teen who filmed it." Clifton tapped the envelope once. "Any comment from the officers?" Linley hesitated. "They've lawyered up." He looked up. "Both of them?" She nodded. "Trent Mullery is being represented by a union attorney. Bryce Fenwick retained private counsel this morning." He leaned back. "Interesting." She sat across from him. "Judge, they didn't know who you were. That's part of their defense." "That's the problem, Devra. They shouldn't have to know who I am to treat me like a person." A short silence stretched between them. She reached into her bag and pulled out a printed email. "You're going to want to see this." He scanned the page. It was from the District Ethics Board. A request urgent for a preliminary misconduct hearing. Today, in his courtroom, Clifton raised an eyebrow. "Today? They say it's in the public interest. The video's gone national. We're getting attention from the Justice Department." He stood up slowly. "Then let's not keep anyone waiting." Courtroom 2C was full before 9 a.m. Reporters lined the back wall. One local blogger live-streamed from her phone. Every seat was taken, and the murmurs grew louder until the bailiff walked in. "All rise!" And then, silence. Clifton stepped through the side door, wearing his robe, his posture even. He didn't scan the room. He didn't look at the cameras. He took his seat and spoke with clarity. "You may be seated." Chairs creaked. Whispers died down. "This is a preliminary review hearing regarding an incident that took place yesterday involving 2 members of the Lafayette Police Department. I will preside." At the defense table, Mullery sat stiffly, his lawyer whispering something into his ear. Fenwick looked pale, hands clenched together under the table. His attorney, A woman in her 40s with sharp glasses whispered, "Just breathe." Clifton's eyes fell briefly on both of them. Neither returned the gaze. He cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I want to make one thing very clear. This hearing is not about me. It's about conduct, evidence, and the standards we claim to uphold." The bailiff brought forward the first file. Photos from the arrest, time-stamped bodycam footage, and the written statement from the gas station manager. Geneva watched from the front row, her face unreadable. Clifton opened the first folder slowly. "Officer Mullery, Officer Fenwick, you are both entitled to representation. This hearing will proceed with full transparency. You'll have the opportunity to respond." Mullery shifted in his seat. The moment hung. And then, for the first time, Clifton looked up and met their eyes. "You placed a man in handcuffs for fueling his car." Neither officer spoke. Clifton paused, let the silence work. But just as the courtroom settled, a familiar voice came from the doorway. Someone who hadn't spoken yet, but who had seen everything. The night before the hearing, Clifton didn't sleep much. He never did before something big. Not during bar exams, not when Maren was born, and certainly not now. The house was quiet. Geneva had gone to bed early, knowing her husband needed space. The hallway light was left on, something they'd done since Maren was little, and somehow it still brought comfort. Clifton sat at the dining table, surrounded by case files and handwritten notes. The manila envelope from Internal Affairs sat unopened beside his laptop. He hadn't needed to see it again. He remembered every second of it. How cold the metal felt on his wrists, the look in the older officer's eyes, the way the younger one kept glancing away like he didn't want to be part of it, but didn't know how to stop it either. He didn't watch the video again. He watched the still frame, the one everyone kept sharing online. It showed him turned slightly to the side, hoodie wrinkled, face calm, but tired. Behind him, Officer Mallory's hand was pushing his shoulder down. You couldn't see the badge, but you could see the power. He thought about not showing up in his robe the next day, thought about just standing in plain clothes and speaking as himself. But then what? Wouldn't that feed into the idea that his identity was separate from his authority? No. He would wear the robe, not because he needed to prove anything, but because they did. From the living room came the soft buzz of the muted TV, still playing late-night cable news. On screen, a panel of 3 legal analysts debated what would happen next in Lafayette. One of them mispronounced his last name. The others just argued about whether he should recuse himself from the case. None of them had called him. None had asked how he was doing. He shut it off. In the quiet, he stared at an old photograph of his father, George Baines, on the bookshelf across the room, a pipe in one hand, a file in the other. George had been a city bus driver for 30 years and had never missed a single day of work. He used to say, "You don't have to wear a badge to know right from wrong." That stuck with Clifton. Always had. At 1:34 a.m., he pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing. Not a speech, not notes for the hearing, but questions. The kind that couldn't be dodged with rehearsed answers. Why did you run my plates before speaking to me? Why did you assume a stolen vehicle without probable cause? Why was resisting added when there was no struggle? Why did only one of you speak up afterward? He read them back slowly, one by one. No fancy language. Just plain truth. Then he wrote a final question and underlined it twice. Would this arrest have happened if I looked like you? He didn't know if he'd ask it in court, but he needed to write it. By morning, Geneva came into the kitchen and found him already dressed, shirt buttoned, tie perfectly aligned, robe over his arm. She poured coffee. Did you sleep? A little. She handed him the mug. You ready? He took a long sip before answering. Not really. She smiled softly. Good. Means your heart's still working. They rode together in silence. The streets were waking up, school buses rolling out, sunlight cutting through trees as Lafayette stretched into another day. But something felt different now. Something had shifted. Outside the courthouse, a line of people had already formed. Some carried signs. Others held folded newspapers. A few had come from out of town, just to witness the hearing. Clifton took a deep breath before stepping out of the car. Geneva squeezed his hand once and let go. He walked through the courthouse entrance slowly, not as a man seeking justice for himself, but as someone preparing to ask hard questions on behalf of everyone who couldn't sit in his seat. But the moment he stepped into chambers, a name caught his attention. Someone unexpected had just been added to the witness list. The energy inside courtroom 2C wasn't loud. It was tight, controlled. Everyone sat a little straighter. Even the air felt heavier, like people were holding their breath without realizing it. At 9:01 a.m. Clifton entered in full robes. He didn't scan the crowd, didn't glance at the cameras or journalists lining the back. His eyes went straight to the two chairs at the defense table. Officer Trent Mullery sat on the left, stiff as steel, eyes locked ahead like he was back in a police academy drill. Officer Bryce Fenwick sat beside him, visibly shaken, his tie loose, fingers pressed into each other like he was trying to anchor himself to something solid. Behind them, 2 rows of law enforcement representatives from the department sat as observers. Some looked tense. Others just looked tired. And in the very front row, Geneva watched her husband, hands folded in her lap. Marin had stayed home, but she'd sent a text just before the gavel came down. "Say what they won't." Clifton adjusted his robe, tapped his microphone. "This hearing will come to order." Chairs squeaked as the audience leaned forward. "This is a preliminary misconduct review based on events that occurred on Tuesday afternoon involving officers Trent Mullery and Bryce Fenwick. This court has reviewed body camera footage, public video, dispatch logs, and 6 eyewitness statements." He let that settle. "To be clear, this is not a criminal trial. It is a formal review to determine whether departmental protocol was violated and whether disciplinary action or criminal referral is warranted." He turned toward the defense table. "Officers, you will each have the opportunity to respond. You may also call witnesses, as will the committee." Before either lawyer could speak, the courtroom door opened again. The teen from the gas station, the one who filmed the video, walked in with his mother. A marshal guided them to a reserved seat near the front. Clifton glanced down at the updated witness list on his desk. Name: Terran McBride. Age: 17. Student: J.D. Gautreaux High School. The courtroom doors shut quietly behind them. From the gallery, someone whispered, "That's the kid from the video," and was immediately hushed. Fenwick's attorney rose first. "Your Honor, we'd like to request a brief recess before we proceed. Officer Fenwick has expressed concerns about procedural clarity and would like a moment with counsel." Clifton raised an eyebrow. "Officer Fenwick, do you wish to delay?" Fenwick hesitated, then shook his head slowly. "No, sir." "You may proceed, then." The attorney sat back down, defeated. Clifton continued. "The committee has also requested direct testimony from the witness who recorded the event. We will hear from him shortly." He looked at the young man. "Mr. McBride, thank you for coming. We'll call on you soon." Terran nodded respectfully. Clifton returned his focus to the table. "Officer Mallory, we'll begin with you." Mallory's attorney stood and began a long explanation about procedure, public safety, split-second decision-making, and department pressure. It was clinical. Cold. By the time she finished, it had the weight of paperwork, not truth. Clifton didn't respond right away. He simply looked to Mullery and asked, "Did you believe you were making a lawful arrest?" Mullery finally spoke. "Based on the information at the time, yes." "What was that information?" Mullery stiffened. "We had a bolo, black male, mid-40s, driving a silver hybrid SUV reported stolen from a discount store across town. And did the bolo include clothing, license plate, specific identifying markers?" "It said grey hoodie." "That was enough." Clifton's voice didn't rise. "That was enough?" "Yes, sir." "Did the suspect description mention anything about behavior? Resistance? Weapons?" "No, sir." "Yet you approached me with your hand on your firearm." Mullery looked straight ahead. "For safety." Clifton nodded once, then turned to Fenwick. "And you, Officer Fenwick? Did you attempt to verify the information before I was placed in cuffs?" Fenwick's throat moved before he spoke. "No, Your Honor." "Did you question the decision?" "No." "Why not?" There was a pause. Because I didn't want to contradict my partner in the field. Clifton leaned forward, his voice steady. Even if he was wrong? Fenwick didn't answer. But before Clifton could press further, a hand raised in the gallery. Terran McBride was ready to speak, and he wasn't going to hold back. Terran McBride adjusted his hoodie as he stepped up to the witness stand. He looked younger than he did in the video, still baby-faced, with a nervous energy in his legs that made him bounce slightly as he stood. His mum gave him a short nod from the front row, arms crossed, eyes fierce. Clifton motioned to the bailiff. "Please swear the witness in." Terran raised his right hand and repeated the oath, voice wavering at first but gaining strength by the end. Once seated, he leaned into the mic, then looked directly at Clifton. "You're the judge from the video," he said. There were light chuckles in the crowd. Clifton didn't smile. "I am." Terran nodded. "Thought so." "Mr. McBride," Clifton said calmly, "can you describe what you saw at the gas station on Tuesday afternoon?" Terran took a breath. "I was walking back to school from lunch. I always cut through that chevron on Myrtle. I saw a silver SUV at Pump 3. I saw you standing there just getting gas. That's it." And then the police pulled up fast. Like, not casual. Like they were already mad. 2 cars. First one blocked your exit. Second one came behind you. They got out, hands on their belts like something was going down. I stopped walking. Why? 'Cause I've seen this before. Not with judges, though. Just with people who look like me. His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed through. One cop yelled something. I didn't hear it clear. You had your hands up. You said something about your ID being inside the car. They didn't listen. They cuffed you. Right there. And they weren't gentle about it either. Clifton nodded slowly. Did you see me make any sudden moves? Raise my voice? No, sir. Did I resist? No, sir. Did either officer ask for identification before applying handcuffs? Terran shook his head. Nope. They didn't ask nothing. Just started treating you like you were already guilty. There was a murmur from the gallery. Clifton held up a hand to quiet it. Did you record the entire interaction? Yes, sir. From the moment the first cop walked toward you till they put you in the back of the car. Why did you start recording? Terran didn't hesitate. Because I didn't trust what I was seeing, and I wanted proof. And what did you think when you later found out the man in the cuffs was a judge? Terran let out a breath. I thought, maybe now they'll care. A silence followed. No one coughed. No one shuffled papers. Even Mullery looked up for a second. Clifton let the pause breathe before continuing. Thank you, Mr. McBride. Your statement is appreciated. Terran stood to leave, but before he walked back to his seat, he turned once more to the courtroom. I didn't know his name, he said. I just saw a man getting treated like a suspect because of his face, not his actions. That could have been my uncle. Could have been my dad. Could have been me. Clifton watched him walk away. No drama. No applause. Just truth in motion. He turned back to the defense table. Officer Fenwick, Officer Mullery, you've heard from a witness. You've seen the video. You've read the department report. Do either of you wish to speak as people, not through your lawyers? The room was still. Mullery's lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, whispering something. But it was Fenwick who stood. His voice was small at first. I didn't know who he was, but I knew what we were doing wasn't right. Clifton looked directly at him. Then why didn't you say something? Fenwick looked at the floor. Because I've only been on the force 2 years. Mullery's been here 15. I didn't want to make waves. And what do you want now? He raised his eyes. To fix it. Or at least, stop pretending it didn't happen. Clifton looked down at his notes. Scribbled one short word in the corner. Conscience. Then he faced the room again. We are not here to destroy reputations. We are here to restore accountability. But before he could render a decision, one final name was called to the stand, and it was someone Clifton never expected to face in this context. When the bailiff called her name, Clifton's posture shifted, not visibly, but inwardly. He hadn't seen it coming. Detective Alina Navarro, please take the stand. She stepped forward with quiet authority. No notes, no hesitation. Her badge gleamed against her blazer as she walked past Mullery and Fenwick. Mullery kept his eyes straight. Fenwick glanced up, visibly uncomfortable. Navarro had worked internal cases before. She knew where this was going. But today, it was personal. After she was sworn in, Clifton leaned slightly forward. "Detective Navarro, how long have you been with the Lafayette Police Department?" 17 years, she answered crisply. 12 of them in investigations, 5 with internal affairs. And on the afternoon in question, where were you? In the precinct. I saw Officers Mullery and Fenwick bring in Judge Baines. I didn't know who they had in custody until I recognized his face. What was your reaction? She took a moment. Surprise, followed by disbelief, and then concern. Why concern? Because I've reviewed over 36 misconduct complaints in the past 2 years, and when I saw the cuffs on Judge Baines, I knew something wasn't right. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He looked like he'd seen this before, but never from that side of the desk. Geneva, in the front row, looked down quietly. Did you intervene? I asked why he was being detained. Mullery said he fit a vehicle description tied to a theft. I asked if they had run the plates before the arrest. They hadn't. Clifton stayed composed, but his fingers tapped twice on the bench. And what happened next? I ordered the cuffs removed. Then I called Lieutenant Linley. We reviewed the footage and began formal documentation for a misconduct hearing. Clifton paused, then asked, "Detective, based on your experience, was protocol followed during the initial stop?" "No," she replied firmly. "Not even close. In your view, what should have happened?" "They should have approached, asked for identification, verified ownership of the vehicle. There was no urgency, no fleeing suspect, just assumptions." Clifton leaned back. "Would this be considered a pattern for Officer Mallory?" She hesitated for a half-second. This would be his 4th incident involving questionable stops in the last 6 years. A murmur rippled across the room. Clifton raised a hand for silence. "And Officer Fenwick?" "Clean file," she said. "But this moment shows why silence can still do harm." Clifton gave a slight nod. "Thank you, Detective." Navarro stepped down and returned to her seat near the back. But the weight of her testimony lingered. Clifton looked at the defense table. Both attorneys whispered to their clients. Mullery's jaw was clenched. Fenwick just stared at the floor. Then Clifton turned his attention to the courtroom. "There's something I want everyone to understand," he began. "Misconduct doesn't always come with bruises or broken bones. Sometimes it shows up as a pair of handcuffs slapped on someone without a question being asked. Sometimes it's a silence from a partner who knows better, but stays quiet." He paused. "And sometimes it's a system that forgets titles don't change how you're treated." The courtroom remained still, like the walls themselves were listening. I was lucky. I had a name, a job, a family. I had cameras. I had people who recognized my face. But if I had been someone else, without a title, without an audience, would we even be here today? He turned back to the officers. "You have the right to wear that badge. But with it comes the responsibility to see people, really see them. Not their hoodie, not their car, not the parts you've decided are suspicious." He leaned forward, elbows on the bench. "I don't know if you'll remember this day 5 years from now, but I will. And so will everyone who watched that video." But with every eye in the courtroom locked on him, there was still one final thing left to do, and it couldn't wait any longer. Clifton sat quietly for a moment, letting the courtroom sit in its own stillness. No rustling papers, no whispers, no camera clicks, just breath. One long, collective breath. He glanced at the clock above the chamber doors. 10:42 a.m. Then, slowly, he reached for the decision folder beside him. His tone didn't change. He didn't raise his voice or pound the desk. He didn't need to. Everyone was already leaning in. "This court has reviewed the incident. Based on video evidence, witness testimony, and department records, I am issuing the following findings." He looked at Mullery first. "Sergeant Trent Mullery demonstrated reckless conduct during a non-urgent field engagement, including detainment without proper cause, failure to verify identity, and unnecessary escalation. You are hereby referred to the Lafayette Police Department's Office of Internal Affairs for disciplinary action. And this court recommends immediate suspension pending a full review of your previous misconduct cases. Mullery's lawyer stood as if to object, but Clifton raised a hand. You may appeal this recommendation to the Oversight Committee, but your actions on Tuesday speak for themselves. Then he turned to Fenwick. Officer Bryce Fenwick, your inaction played a significant role in what occurred. While you did not initiate the arrest, you failed to intervene. However, your testimony today showed recognition of that failure and a willingness to take responsibility. This court recommends departmental retraining, temporary desk duty, and the assignment of a mentor officer, preferably someone outside of your direct chain of command. Fenwick closed his eyes briefly, exhaling through his nose. It wasn't relief. It was something else. Maybe regret finally being given structure. Clifton turned to address the entire courtroom. Let me be clear. This is not about me. This is about what happens when perception replaces policy, when judgment replaces procedure, when silence becomes complicity. He let that settle for a beat. We tell ourselves this country works because we have systems, but a system is only as honest as the people operating it. He looked toward the young people in the crowd, students from the local university, a few teenagers near the back, and Terran, sitting quietly with his mother. I wasn't targeted because I'm a judge. I was targeted because someone saw what they expected to see, not what was there. It just so happens that this time, they picked the wrong man to dehumanize. Geneva watched him closely, hand resting over her heart. Clifton's voice dropped lower. You shouldn't need a title to be treated like a citizen. You shouldn't have to go viral to be believed. You shouldn't have to wear a robe to be respected. He took off his glasses and set them gently on the bench. I have spent nearly 2 decades on this side of the courtroom, and I can tell you this with certainty. Fear does not justify laziness. A badge is not armor against accountability. And the only thing worse than making a bad call is refusing to learn from it. He stood slowly. This hearing is now closed. And then came the gavel. Not loud, just one deliberate strike. Sharp. Final. People stood. No one clapped. No one cheered. But something had shifted. As Clifton exited through the side door, Terran stood up and gave a slight nod. Quiet acknowledgement between two people who never should have met the way they did, but who would never forget it. Outside, the sun was high now. Reporters gathered like birds, but Clifton didn't stop. Geneva was waiting by the car, holding the door open. You did what you had to do, she said as he slid inside. I did what they needed me to do, he replied. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Geneva asked, You still want to stop by Marin's dorm later? Yeah, he said. But let's get some coffee first. Back at the courthouse, as the crowd spilled out onto the steps, someone chalked 3 simple words onto the sidewalk near the entrance. Respect without rank. It didn't need a hashtag. It didn't need a campaign. It just needed to be true. If this story moved you, share it. Speak about it. Talk to your kids, your friends, your neighbors. We don't change anything by staying quiet. And if you want more stories that speak the truth, subscribe and stay tuned.